Hey, everybody. It's not the weekend. Inside joke. Regardless, welcome to Thinking Out Loud. Hope you enjoyed week 3. I know I kind of sort of did. My name is Andrew Siciliano. Sam Betesh is here as well. As we do this every week. We look back at the week that was in the NFL, try to look ahead to the week moving forward. In this case, looking back at week 3, looking ahead to week 4. We're almost at the quarter pole where coaches and commentators and analysts and honestly players as well, they'll tell you the same thing. You kind of step back and reevaluate. I don't know how we got here this quickly, but we're here. It feels as if the season began yesterday. It didn't. We are 3 weeks down. And all the things we thought we knew going into week 3, a lot of them, they're just gone. You could burn them. You could throw them out the window. You could throw them in your favorite receptacle. You could recycle them if you want to. Matter of fact, you should recycle them. I guarantee you many of those hot takes from the hot take time machine will come back a little bit later and be recycled. But I do know one thing, as I say hi to Sam Betesh. My one thing I'm certain of, Sam, is that Josh Allen is the MVP through 3 weeks. Also, this just in, there is no MVP after 3 weeks. There is no.
They don't. Apparently, they don't cash those tickets just yet. And I'm still in the glow of 3rd and 16. Hurts to Goddard for 60 yards of all the plays that would not save a season, but at least make it more interesting to this point. That was interesting in New Orleans for sure.
I love how you think that a play in week 3 saved the season. Because you're not alone.
I caught myself.
There are a lot of fans. I get it. A lot of people in buildings as well, media as well, that think that something that happens week 3 can quote unquote save your season. Do you think it can?
It felt in the moment, it felt big, and I know we've got plenty today. Again, we've already got Josh Allen's the MVP through 3 weeks, so I figured, the Eagles.
Yeah, let's be dramatic. Why not?
Why not?
Let's throw stuff against the dramatic wall. Josh Allen is playing better than anyone in football. Let's say this right now. They don't miss Stephon Diggs, and that's not a shot at Stephon Diggs. I love the guy. He's doing fine in Houston, just fine, although they lost, and they lost badly in Minnesota. We'll get to that coming up in a second. But Josh Allen's spreading the ball around, and he has an hour back there to throw it. He could read the Buffalo News. He could read Tim Graham in The Athletic. He could probably get a radio and listen to Chris Brown up in the booth describing in play-by-play terms how much time he has in the pocket. It's scary, and he is just spraying the ball around the field, whether it's Khalil Shakir, whether it's Dawson Knox, whether it's Keon Coleman, whomever it is. Josh Allen looks that good right now. And the Bills, this game was over at the start of the second quarter. I'm glad we had 2 Monday night games. Commanders and Bengals, fun down to the very end. This one, not fun, unless you're in Buffalo and unless you're a Bills fan. Now, the next 3 weeks are going to get difficult for the Bills. They got to go on the road to Baltimore, Houston, and the New York Jets. Right now, all 3 very much contenders. So the Ravens, after bouncing back, proved that they're not just left for dead. They are 1-2. They're a formidable road opponent. And then the Texans and then the Jets. It is a rough road ahead here these next 3 weeks. But Josh Allen is playing better than anyone in football. And he's doing so at a time in which some people doubted him. Could he do it without Diggs? Could he do it with a full season here of Joe Brady? Was that Joe Brady bounce just, I don't know, like getting a new teacher midway through the school year last year? And could they come back and do it again this year? The answer is he can, and they are. And there's another thing going on in Buffalo as well. And I know that a lot of you are going to say, especially outside and even inside Buffalo, that this is great, but it doesn't matter until January. This is great, but we'd like to get back to an AFC championship game. This is great, but we'd like to be in New Orleans come February. I totally get it, and you're not going to get too excited for September's success. But at a personal level, Josh Allen's angling for a new contract. We've seen the money thrown around. 55, that number for a bunch of guys. 60, the number for Dak. Dak's a good quarterback. His team not so good right now. They're 1-2. But I'll ask you this, Sam. If Dak is worth 60, what is Josh Allen worth from his play through these first 3 weeks if he keeps it up and he wins an MVP? the number has to begin with a 6, right?
Clearly, and as you always say, these things are just about the timing of it all, right? We always want to throw up the list. I mean, look, we all love lists, right, Andrew? Everything's a list. I mean, even when we go to eat in LA, it's always about, what hamburger is best at the moment and all of that. So whatever quarterback is getting paid in that moment, whatever contract is up, essentially is at that number. So once Dak has done what he did, that sets the menu, and that's clearly what it is. But has there been a better 3-game stretch for a quarterback this season? No, as you very much laid out. Actually, maybe the guy that we're also watching on Monday night for the Commanders, perhaps, at this point. But to be fair, Josh Allen is going to be worth that, especially when you look at the percentage of the offense with which he is involved. And of course, every quarterback is, but when you really look at scoring and in regards to what he does with his legs, and many times, and many Buffalo fans will tell you, especially last season, they wanted Josh Allen with the ball a little less because of the turnovers, because of putting himself in harm's way, etc. But if you're talking about money right now for a quarterback and who would be worth it and who would look right at the top of the list, Josh Allen, if everyone said was the highest paid quarterback, we would nod heads.
Nobody would
simply be nodding heads.
Yeah, and he's using his legs less. They have James Cook, who, hey, when he turned the corner and he had that speed and burst to the pylon last night, you knew as soon as he turned it on, nobody was going to catch him. When the field opened up, when they had a light box, when he spread him out, Josh Allen can still call his own number and run. He's the MVP. I mean, he's the one guy where you can step back and there aren't. Here's the test. Maybe Kansas City. Kansas City's the outlier here. How many teams, if given truth serum and given the opportunity to swap their guy out for Josh Allen, would say no? 1? Maybe, I mean, would the Jets and Aaron Rodgers say no? No, he's 40. You'd probably do it. How many teams would say no? Kansas City. That's probably it. Now, the outliers would be teams with quarterbacks on rookie contracts.
That's exactly. There you go. Thank you.
Jayden Daniels or like Caleb Williams, because of the cost control, and you don't want to have to pay a quarterback $60 million next year. But that is how well Josh is playing. On a personal level, I'm happy for the guy. I mean, he has battled through a lot. I'm not talking like personal adversity. I mean, he's not one always getting screamed at by the yelling heads on TV and doubting his ability. It's not like that. But there were people that legitimately doubted what this offense would look like without Stephon Diggs. And so far, it is fantastic. Now, the opposite side of fantastic, and I saw, Sam, these guys in person in week 2, the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I think, and I told you this last week, they're in legitimate trouble. They, right now, have to go to Houston on a short week. Texans, angry after losing in Minnesota, especially the way they did lose in Minnesota a week ago. I think the Jaguars are looking at 0-4, and then they get Indianapolis at home. That's a division game. And then you get the Bears. That game is in London. And then the Patriots. That game is in London. If they are 0-5, or maybe 0-6, maybe if they're 0-5 going to London for a team that prides itself as kind of the London franchise, not a good look at all. Also not a good look, the way that Trevor Lawrence was simply overthrowing, like Damar Hamlin's pick. He's got Brian Thomas open. I mean, it's a massive window. He airmailed him, and Damar Hamlin's got the easy pick. He's playing center field. The ball goes right to him. And Lawrence said afterwards that he's playing poorly. He owned it. You know what I also think was interesting? He said that he has to maybe, I take it back, this is Joe Burrow, kind of reevaluate his leadership style. That wasn't Lawrence, I'm sorry. It was Joe Burrow. But they just gave Trevor Lawrence $55 million. It's not about the money, but the money brings about hard conversations when you commit money to Trevor Lawrence and Josh Hines-Allen and Tyson Campbell and Cam Robinson. When you commit that kind of money, those are all premium positions. You're going to have to pay for those guys if you have good ones, and they think that they do. And then the team doesn't win when the owner comes out in the offseason and specifically says This is the best team that we have ever had here. Ever. And it's time to win. And that includes Mark Brunell teams, Maurice Jones-Drew teams, David Garrard teams, Fred Taylor teams, Tony Baselli teams, teams that when we were younger were legit playoff contenders. When you say, I'm writing the checks, this is the best team we've had, and you start like this, and you're staring at 0-4, Sam, that's not good.
Keenan McCardle teams. I know he
Keenan
wanted to be
McCardle
mentioned.
teams.
Yeah, he wanted to be mentioned in that as well. Andrew, let's go with a little history on this, and I just want to look at Doug Peterson here. And obviously, you're saying it without saying it, right? If you're looking at 0-4, you're looking at 0-5, and you're saying hard decisions are going to have to be made. That's a Doug Peterson conversation, and it's whether or not he's going to be here and whether or not he is making Trevor Lawrence a better quarterback. You had gone over this. In fact, you were worried before this game. This was just you and I chatting about the league through 2 weeks. You said Jacksonville, it's an issue. And when you look at Lawrence, 8 straight starts they've lost of his. I mean, that's really a difficult one to look past. So something's going on with Trevor Lawrence. But when you look at Doug Peterson, Andrew, is this a Press Taylor issue? Apparently what happened in Philadelphia was Doug Peterson.
All those points they gave up last night. You
Defensively,
can't blame the OC for all of it.
Although, again, when you've got drives that are dropped pass, sack, I mean, that's just, I mean, I'm sorry, that's just really inexcusable. Something is not right there. Something is not right in Jacksonville. And again, Doug did not want to fire Press Taylor in Philadelphia. That was arguably the reason that they split from Doug Peterson. Because remember, that was sort of a Carson Wentz, Doug Peterson thing, and both guys ended up being gone at that point. You start to wonder, is Trevor Lawrence better with this coaching staff? You think about that game against the Chargers, the playoff game against the Chargers, Andrew. That was the moment. That was, we have figured this out. This is headed in the right direction. Of course, losing the next week in Kansas City in the playoffs, no one's going to fault them for that. It felt like the Jags were on the right path. And now many people thought this division was, of course, Houston is there, but many people thought it was still up for grabs. This does not look like a better version of Trevor. It just doesn't.
No,
it's just not.
It doesn't at all. And you have top picks at right tackle and left tackle. You brought in Mitch Morse in the offseason. That was his homecoming last night to Buffalo. So he's kind of stabilized the center position in the middle of that offensive line. You have an older Brandon Sheriff there as well in the middle. There is talent on that team. Or maybe there are guys that you drafted high and that you've paid on second contracts that you thought really were good, but they're not good enough. They've got to answer some questions there, and if they don't start winning, those questions are only going to get louder. Now, look, last night they played without Tyson Campbell, who you paid at corner, without Darnell Savage, who you brought in the offseason from Green Bay at safety. So they are certainly banged up in the secondary. But Ryan Nielsen loves to play man, and if you beat me, beat me. Well, Josh Allen was beating you last night because he's one of one, as one of his teammates said in the locker room after the game. All right, so that was one of the Monday night games. I'm glad we had two because the other one was good. Like, it was really good. It was Jayden Daniels and Joe Burrow. And let's start with Joe Burrow. Opening possession, Bengals, or rather the Commanders, bring a safety up. You see the single coverage, and you drop it in the basket there to Jamar Chase down the sideline. He's back in the end zone. Everybody is happy, and it is going to be a party in Cincinnati. The 0-2 Bengals, what me worry. We always figure it out in September. We don't care. Joe says that we started 0-2. Actually, we do care, but we're not worried. All right, we're fine. Trust me. Believe me. And my blonde hair. We're good. But then all of a sudden, Jayden Daniels brings him back. Austin Eckler looks like a man 5-6 years younger. We didn't see this burst at the end of his Chargers career. He had injuries, certainly, but Austin Eckler is getting older. He doesn't have that breakaway speed. He's not scoring from outside the 20, no explosives. He's only scoring on the goal line, things like that. All of a sudden, Austin Eckler, where is this coming from? Jayden Daniels spreading the ball around the field. We're tied. Okay. Every time you look up and Sam, I was out for dinner here in LA, had the game on, in the restaurant. Every time you looked up, Jayden Daniels was making another play. But then every time you looked up, Joe Burrow was making another play. And back and forth they go. And the headline out of this one, much like the headline out of Buffalo, is we know we have our guy. Like, that's my hometown, Washington. I cannot tell you how much my phone was blowing up with people that are not only back on the Commanders bandwagon, but honest to goodness, like rejoining the franchise after decades of apathy away. And Jayden Daniels, not just new ownership last year, that was big, but Jayden Daniels is the reason. And it feels very much like RG3 did in 2012. And that iconic image of him with his fingers up in the air on the turf in New Orleans after that opening day win. And that team went to the playoffs, obviously, with Mike Shanahan. He played with a bad knee, and you know the rest, what happened from there. But it has that feel, except this time they believe it's going to go differently. And when you listen to the Commanders in the locker room, Terry McLaurin most notably here, it's almost, I'm not saying that they're blasphemous, but the way they describe Jayden Daniels, it's like they've had this religious epiphany. Like they have seen the light and his name is Jayden Daniels. Terry McLaurin said after the game, that game-winning touchdown was ridiculous. And by the way, Daniels got drilled by a blitzing DB off the edge there.
Thank you.
Drilled. Okay? That game-winning touchdown, Terry McLaurin said afterwards, I look, I saw it. Hey, if they do that, I saw it on tape. If I see this formation, I know I'm getting single coverage. If we motion, I know the leverage I'm going to get. Throw me the ball. I asked Cliff for that play call. They listened to me, and the kid made the throw. That hasn't happened here before. And because it did, the look on his face, and by the way, hell of a catch. Like, it's something different there. I'm not suggesting they're going to win the NFC East. I'm not even suggesting they're going to make the playoffs. But let me ask you this. Can we put a photo up? Great catch. Sam, let me put a photo up here.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask aloud.
Okay. This is cute.
Do we know who this man is? Right there. Does anyone know who that is? It looks like a dude who bought some shoulder pads and a Commander's hat at Dick's Sporting Goods and is dressing up as a commander for Halloween. Looks like that dad that's handing out candy on Halloween at the front door. You know?
Do we know
who that is?
Well, here's what's interesting about this, Andrew. So you had first sent this to me, and I was thinking, all right, do I know who this is? Now, what it sort of looks like in regards to who is this, and we really don't know, and I like that we're playing the guessing game. But you asked me who this is, and at first, I absolutely did not know, certainly not just by appearance. It almost looks as if this is what happens when you unveil new jerseys. This is right. This is sort of like photo day. This looks like, okay, here's our model for the new photos. Now, the way he's holding the football would be an indication here, of course. But when you first sent this to me, I thought, you know what? Andrew loves to pick something out that is really in the weeds. And I thought, okay, it's so obvious the MVP of the Commanders to this point is Jayden Daniels. Everyone will say that. But a little, something else that's really fascinating, especially when you look at their week 2 win against the Giants. Austin Seibert was 7 for 7 on field goals, right? And ultimately last night hit another one, 8 for 8. I believe he was signed 8 days ago. And he comes in. And so I'm thinking for a second, maybe this is Seibert. Doesn't look exactly, not that I know Seibert. He's not been in my living room. I wouldn't know if he's walking down the street. But I'm thinking kicking game, yes. And I think I was on the right track, but please let us know who this is. I think now, especially looking at the position of the football, I think I know who this is.
That is a man who's been paid for no work the last 2 weeks. He has not worked since week 1. Well, not necessarily fair. He's the holder, but that is the punter, Tress Way. That's a real name. Tress, Tress, Way, W-A-Y. Tress Way didn't punt last night. We're taping this on Tuesday. He didn't punt week 2 either. If you include kneel downs, and the Commanders have won 2 in a row, so they've been kneeling down, they have scored or kneeled down 17 consecutive possessions. Tress Way has not used his foot to punt a football since week 1, at least, during game action. Don't know if they even need him. Well, I kid because I don't care. But who do the Commanders get this week? I'm guessing they're going to have to punt at least once against Arizona, just the law of averages. I guarantee he's going to have to punt against the Browns once or twice or more. But Tress Way, stealing money right now, not punting. Enjoy it while you can. And again, Jayden Daniels, happy for my friends back home. They have found their guy, and that is bringing people back to the store in Washington. Because growing up there, I cannot emphasize this enough. They lost a generation, an entire generation of fans. And by the way, we here in Los Angeles did as well. The Rams and the Raiders went away. Then the Rams and the Chargers came back. But in that, 20-year window, there were no teams here. And with Sunday Ticket and fantasy football and the ability on your phone, if you're a young fan, to buy a jersey on mom's credit card and have it show up on the front door tomorrow for some team that you saw on TV or some team that, a player that you saw on social media or you have in fantasy, we lost a generation. They didn't need a team. Rams came back, 2 Super Bowl appearances, one trip. Chargers came back. Then you have fans here. Again, the Commanders didn't have a team leave, but they had a fan base that basically left them. And you had 20 years of apathy there with, again, Sunday Ticket and fantasy and all these things where they decided we don't need you anymore. Like, we're not going to root for the team that our parents rooted for because our parents have now turned against them. We don't even know them. But now they're back because there is a reason for hope and a reason to believe. And his name is Jayden Daniels. Flip side of that, in Cincinnati.
Real quick on this with Daniels, just because you brought it up, and I think it is so worth pointing out. Jayden Daniels and the connection to RG3 and what could happen. And of course, there is that, there's that doubt with everyone because they're thinking about what happened at the end with RG3 and the injury, etc. But in regards to what you said about something that Jayden Daniels did in that game on Monday night, it's really worth us taking another look because it really was so special to see. This was just incredible. Here is the other angle of the touchdown pass to McLaurin that puts the game away, essentially. You talked about the hit that he takes on the blitz. In real live action, when that play is happening, it looks as if Daniels is throwing the ball up as a prayer, almost out of bounds, just to not be sacked at that point because he is getting hit so hard. And yet the precision on which that ball drops into Terry McLaurin to catch the ball only where he can get it, this is a play from a 10-year vet. To know you're going to get hit. Look how Andrew, this is a sea lion getting attacked by a great white shark. That's what that video looks like there. And he is, this is, again, when the shark gets the sea lion out of the water, jumping up. He is hit. This is a man being launched into another man. And look where he puts that ball. That was a thing of beauty.
I was watching my friends on GMFB this morning, and I think they suggested that next gen claims, and this is another one of those stats that I couldn't care less about, but I'll give it to you regardless. There's a setup, right, that had a 10% catch probability or completion probability, something like that, which is a number the kids can hang their hat on. To me, it kind of takes away from just the pure video. Just look at it. You know how difficult it is. I don't know how they calculate the 10%. I don't know why we need to put a number on it. Like, does the 10%? I don't even know. But there's a number. You can hang your hat on that number. 10% completion probability, whatever that means. I know it was a hell of a throw and a hell of a catch. And Dax Hill, who's a safety, kind of playing corner, obviously playing corner there, was the man who got stuck there. So flip it around to the Bengals. They're 0-3. I thought they were going to win this one. I thought the Commanders would hang tough with them. But yeah, I did think they were going to win this one. And I do think it's time to step back and ask, why do they keep doing this? And is it truly acceptable to always get out of the gate this poorly? Is that an offseason conversation? I don't know. We've had that conversation every offseason for them. They go to Carolina this week. Andy Dalton revenge game. Okay? They go to Carolina to face the red-hot redhead at quarterback. That game is all of a sudden that much more interesting. Now, as Joe Burrow said, they are 0-2 in conference, but they have yet to play a division game. I don't think the Steelers are going to run away with this thing, at least not yet. I think it is more than fixable. They played well enough to win week 1. They didn't. I'm sorry, week 2. They didn't. They played well enough to win last night. They didn't. I don't know. I think they're going to win in Carolina, but I thought they were going to win last night as well, which kind of leads me to, with Andy Dalton here, the idea that through week 3, Sam, what did you call week 3 last week?
So this was,
you said
yes,
it was.
Yes, I said week 3, Truth Serum Sunday.
Truth Serum Sunday.
Because week 3 feels like a separator. I didn't want to say Separation Sunday, so Truth Serum Sunday. Because through 2 weeks, there's a lot of 2-0s that feel shocking and a lot of 0-2s that feel shocking. And then at the end of the season, you realize, okay, it wasn't that important. And usually it's because week 3 is where things start to settle. Right, all of a sudden, 0-2 becomes 1-2, and then it's not as dramatic. Right, 2-0 becomes 2-1, and then you're not really dominating the league. That's why it feels like. And then you have a lot of 2-0s up against each other, and sort of the one that we feel is for real ends up beating. That's sort of that. So Truth Serum Sunday for week 3.
I get it. I like it. I still think it's valid for some teams, but as I was flying home last Sunday night, and I was watching the Rams come back from down 10 late and beat the 49ers. I was watching the Cowboys almost do that. Big third down conversion down the stretch there for Lamar Jackson. Dak was already talking to his teammates and getting his helmet. He thought he was getting back on the field with a chance to take the lead. Anyway, I'm watching those games. I was watching Falcons Chiefs on the plane as well. And then you just sit back and you start connecting the dots and you realize that truth serum, whatever, separation, whatever alliteration you want to use, we don't know anything. Like, the more we think we know something, and this, you could say this almost every week. I used to do this on NFL Network all the time. It was actually sometimes in a thinking out loud segment, like, we know nothing. This week was the example. So going in was a perfect example. The Saints had scored 91 points. 91 points. A Vic Fangio defense, and look, Vic's a brilliant DC, but a Vic Fangio defense that couldn't get off the field against Kirk Cousins to end that game on Monday night. Well, he did the job against the Saints, didn't he? Okay. People were laughing at Bo Nix. My former colleague, love him, James Palmer, said that in Denver the week before that the Steelers DBs were laughing at how simplistic the reads and the offense and the play calls were for Bo Nix. Bo Nix and the Broncos went into Tampa and beat the previously unbeaten Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield. Again, in Tampa. People were so certain that not only the Panthers were the worst team in football, and not only were they guaranteed the first overall pick, and they were likely going to trade Bryce Young, that they just had no talent on that team. No Derek Brown on that team either. They destroyed the Raiders in Vegas in their home opener. Destroyed them. The game was over in the third quarter. CBS, like Spiro Ditas called that game, and I was watching that one on the plane as well. The cutaway, Sam, cutaway after cutaway of Raider fans in the stands there, clearly feeling, you would have to think, the after effects of a weekend and maybe a long Saturday night in Vegas, and that long stare into Bolivian, as Mike Tyson once said, when they realized that Andy Dalton and the winless Panthers were just taking it to them and that they had to get home somehow and justify their weekend and watching this game. Cutaway after cutaway to those fans. Antonio Pierce, after the game, comes out and says, our guys made business decisions, meaning they weren't playing hard. This is the coach saying it. And we're going to have to make business decisions this week because of it. Basically saying, I'm going to cut guys or bench guys. You don't hear that. And that was the team that was winless and hopeless. The Giants went on the road in Cleveland against the Browns. That game didn't go well, clearly, for the Browns. Now they have to go to Vegas to face the Raiders. You had what happened in L.A. The Rams have no O-line. They have no Puka, no Cooper Kupp. They were down 10 in the fourth quarter, and they won the game. So whenever we think we know something, just remember, the NFL is here to tell you, you know nothing. Because what you think you know, you don't know. It's going to change tomorrow.
Andrew, it's so interesting because in Vegas, and anyone who does this for a living, basically being over 52, 53% makes you a genius in this business. So that goes to show you that truly we know nothing. But what was the most stunning piece of week 3? I think you're probably right. It could have been Dalton, but the fact that it extended into Monday as well, that's so beautiful, right? Because Sunday had so many surprises.
What was stunning about Monday?
I would say what the Commanders did.
Okay.
In Cincinnati was stunning in the way that it happened. The fact that the faucet never turned off, because even when it seemed as if Cincinnati had a chance, because Cincinnati did have a chance, stopping the Commanders, not on the second fourth down, but on the second, but not the first fourth down, forcing that field goal there, makes it a game still. And yet Jayden Daniels on third down throws that pass that way, which is just to say it's not going to happen tonight for Cincinnati. An 0-2 Cincinnati team losing that game. I'm sorry. Going now, we look back and say, oh, well, that was against Jayden Daniels. But going into the game, it was, well, it's the 1-1 Commanders, and they're on the road. And we say that so often on the road.
Yeah, look at all the road teams that won this week.
It feels more and more like that is irrelevant. And I would say most importantly and funny because we gave each other some really interesting looks last week when we were talking about the Cowboys. And we said, is there something about the Cowboys? It seems that they don't have it figured out at home. And you looked at me kind of cross-eyed saying, well, Sam, they won 16 in a row at home, which they had.
Has nothing to do with where they're playing.
Exactly.
I don't think so, at least.
I agree.
Not this team.
It doesn't matter what's going on. And clearly they've got a win on the road and none at home. And it just doesn't seem to make any sense whatsoever. Even the Bears, if you look at the way the Bears have played to this point, you would even say their win, it feels like their win should have come last week against Indianapolis. That was Caleb's best game. Caleb's worst game is their win. There's so little that we have figured out, as you say, and yet we feel like geniuses each week going into it. We feel really convinced on the way in, but on the way out, wow, forget about it. And I'll give you credit. You were on the Carolina thing. You sort of had this interesting.
I knew they were going to play better.
You did. You knew something about Andy Dalton there. There was just something. You knew it was going to look different. But what is that? Wow,
I didn't think they're going to play like that. Look, it's one thing to say they're going to get a bounce from Andy Dalton, like they're going to get some veteran professional quarterbacking here, and the offense is going to look better. I think everybody agreed that would happen. Didn't think it was going to look like that, however. Even little things, like, for example, last week, really the first 2 weeks, Sam, the narrative is, well, 50-yard field goals are chip shots now. Everybody makes 50-yard field goals. The numbers were through the roof. 50-yard, maybe we make maybe we make the goalpost more narrow. I mean, people had been having that conversation. I didn't buy it. Like, let's make it Arena League goalposts. 9 misses out of 16 this week. 50-yard field goals. NFL kickers were collectively 7 of 16 in week 3. So even the narrative that you were certain of, 50-yard field goals are now gimmies. There were more misses than makes last week, including the game I was at. Dustin Hopkins missed his first 50-yarder in 2 seasons as a Brown. I think he'd been 10 for 10 coming into this one, and I think he missed from 53. Greg Joseph in that game missed from 48 as well.
Including Justin Tucker.
Tucker.
I mean,
missed another one.
Obviously Moody for the Niners, that changes that game against the Rams. You're absolutely right. Week to week, we like to collect the information.
And those were both indoors.
Yes. It doesn't really make sense. And by the way, nothing about the end of that Rams and the Rams and Niners game made sense at all. Fake punt was nice, but absolutely nothing there made sense in regards to the Rams stealing that game.
I'll say this: what makes sense, what always makes sense in seeing it up close, is Matthew Stafford's ability to be a coach on the field. To look, not only have ridiculous arm angles and look off safeties and look over there and throw over there. Yeah, we've all seen that. The slow-mo replays, they're pretty cool. It's great TV. But his ability to, with a makeshift offensive line, move people around, pick up a blitz, know where it's coming from, know where and how to get the ball out. He's special. Well, down 10 points with 2 minutes to go. You don't expect to win, but
they
somehow won.
In regulation.
Yeah. They somehow won. And they somehow pulled it out. And again, it proved that whatever you think you know, you simply do not know. And maybe after week 4, we'll have a better feel. Look, I know the Bills are good. Yeah, okay. The Seahawks are 3-0. How good are they? I don't know.
Probably find out on Monday night. We feel like we'll find out
Monday night. Seahawks and Lions. But Detroit's all banged up as well. Ragnow. They got plenty of injuries here. Sam Laporta. That's a fascinating game in the NFC. How good are the Vikings? I mean, they just took it to the Texans. Sam Darnold seems to be okay. I think they're pretty good. The Bills, the best team in football? The Chiefs, the best team in football? I mean, is it the same narrative we've seen for how many years now?
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that. Maybe we've outsmarted ourselves so much that everything actually settled down to reality, and the Bills and the Chiefs are the best team in football. Because frankly, for the last 2.5 seasons, we've been trying, ever since that divisional game in which the overtime rule was changed, we've been trying to say that Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes are the 2 best players in the league, and that those teams are the 2 best. And the AFC is clearly a cut above the NFC when you look at quarterback play, et cetera, et cetera. And so Bills and Chiefs looked like they were on this crash course to decide who would represent the AFC in the Super Bowl for years to come. Yet it doesn't happen, and Joe Burrow comes in and sort of screws that up for everybody. You got a Ravens team, Lamar, looking like 2019 Lamar again, and all of this. And yet, right now, Bills Chiefs looks like a crash course somewhere.
Yeah,
those are 2 special teams. With, by the way, and when you look at the schedule, it's so easy to dismiss wins based on records and based on what happens early in seasons. But when you look at the collection of teams that the Bills and Chiefs have beaten to this point, and collectively being 6-0, that's an impressive resume. It's actually an impressive resume based on what we've seen this season out of the teams that they've faced.
Absolutely. And again, the Bills now get this 3-game road trip where they have to open up in Baltimore, and reports of the Ravens' demise are clearly exaggerated here. Derrick Henry, Kalen Carson will be seeing that replay all season long. Sorry, young man. That guy can do that. That game, circle it for me. That game's the fun one this week, as is Monday night. Look, there are a bunch of fun ones, and we will be back for more on those at another time. This has been, and I forgot to say, like, subscribe, send to your friends. Sam, our good friend JT the Brick, I was on his radio show on Sirius on Mad Dog on Monday night, and JT gave the pod a big shout out. So
I heard that. That was a beautiful plug
to JT. Yeah.
I think he understands, or he's getting used to sort of the YouTube world and the podcast world. And so he was very, very excited to see that you were doing this and that you and I were putting this together. And I was listening at that time, and I heard him. That was nice to hear from JT, especially with what Browns and Raiders coming up this week as well.
Tip of the cap to JT, who I will see in Vegas on Sunday after Buckeyes and Spartans Saturday evening, East Lansing on the Peacock. See you there for that. Again, this is Thinking Out Loud. Like, subscribe, click, share. I don't know. Show to your friends, your parents, your pets. For Sam Betesh, I'm Andrew Siciliano. So long, everybody.